Good morning. Good Monday morning. I'd like to call the meeting of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors for December 17th, 2018 to order. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
To come on. There we go. Good morning. Supervisor Cerna?
Here.
Kennedy?
Here.
Frost?
Here.
Natoli?
Here.
Peters?
Here.
And you have a quorum. This meeting of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors is cablecast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, on the Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T UVerse cable systems. The meeting is closed caption and is webcast at sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will be repeated Friday, December 21st at 6 p.m. on Channel 14. A DVD copy is available for checkout from any local library branch. Members of the audience wishing to address the board may fill out a speaker slip and hand it to staff. When the chair calls your name, please come to the podium. Also, please silence your electronic devices at this time.
Thank you. Would you all rise and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Call your first item.
For your first item, item 1 is the North Vineyard Plaza project, a request for a North Vineyard Station-specific plan amendment, rezone, tentative parcel map, and use permit for a property located at the northeast corner of the Bradshaw Road, Gerber Road intersection in the Vineyard community. The environmental document is a mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program.
Morning.
Good morning, members of the board. Leanne Moffett, your planning director, here to finish up an item. You heard a full presentation on this North Vineyard Plaza project at Gerber and Bradshaw on November 7th. We did a report back on December 11th. There were 3 questions initially having to do, 2 of which have been addressed, having to do with tying this project to the PCN request for alcohol findings at the service station and also a wall condition. But there was one remaining question having to do with the requirement for frontage improvements. So the report that's before you, dated December 17th, has a staff recommended revised condition 36. This condition would have the Chevron being required to install the frontage improvements when it goes in on Gerber and Bradshaw, but then any additional development on the site in what's either phase 2 or 3, and there's a revised map that shows that, so there'd be anything other than the Chevron would trigger frontage improvements on either Gerber or Bradshaw with the next first development. So if that is acceptable to the board report has the staff recommendations addressing approval of the amendment to the specific plan, the rezone, the parcel map, the conditional use permit, and the design review.
Mr. Natoli?
Yeah, unless there's any other questions, Madam Chair, I appreciate the work that staff, working with the applicant and with our departments, bring to us, and I'm prepared to move the item unless there's any other questions. So.
I'll second the motion. Please vote.
Unanimous vote. Item 2 is the North Vineyard Plaza Chevron PCN ABC license hearing to determine whether public convenience would be served by issuance of a Type 20 liquor license to Maya Chevron located at 9743 Gerber Road in the Vineyard community.
And I do have a PowerPoint on this. We held the PowerPoint off because we wanted to make sure that you approved the project before you address the requested PCN. So I'm going to run through this PowerPoint here quickly. Again, we're at 9743 Gerber Road in the Vineyard community. As the board well knows.
Before you get started, Madam Clerk, could you please clear the screens? Thank you.
As the board knows, it is actually the state of California that issues the liquor license, but the board is afforded the opportunity to hold a hearing on whether a public inconvenience and necessity should be issued. In this case, they are requesting a Type 20, which is a beer and wine only license. I'll let the screen catch up here.
Okay, sorry, we have a little computer glitch.
No
going
problem.
on here. Are you needing a PowerPoint? Is that what you're?
Yeah, I was going to wait for some of the graphics, but I can move forward, and if you want to see any of the graphics, you'll let me know.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, so here's an aerial of the site. So the next graphic is the 1 mile radius. This is a somewhat unique circumstance because it is a very large census district. And it does not have very many residential units yet inside of the census district, as much of the specific plan is not built out. So within a 1 mile radius, you have one other facility across the street that does have an alcohol license. And then this graphic shows the larger census district, which is how the state regulates the triggering the PCN findings, which shows, again, how large this district is and that there are other facilities, but they are much further primarily to the north and northwest of the project site. Again, they're requesting off-sale beer and wine license, type 20, to go in the convenience store associated with the Chevron. The trigger for the PCN is over-concentration because there's so few residents, it only allows for one PCN, and there are currently 8. But as I noted, the census district is uniquely large. The Vineyard CPAC contemplated this item and did recommend approval on a 4-to-1 vote with 2 absent. The opposing member was concerned that alcohol sales may not be compatible with a nearby Sikh temple and that there was already an existing license across Bradshaw Road and concern about increased crime. However, the supporting members understood the process and felt that the Sheriff's Department recommended conditions were adequate to address any issues. The Sheriff's Department essentially has approved this. Their standard process is to protest granting of the PCN unless conditions are added, and the applicant is agreeing to those conditions. And we have pointed out a number of the standard conditions, including alcohol sales can only be between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. So even though the service station is 24-hour, alcohol sales cannot move past 10 p.m. No single sales of beer, and we've looked at security measures as well. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Mr. Natoli, any questions?
Yep. No, unless anyone signed up, I would just say that I know that, as Leanne's pointed out, we did have several neighbors who appeared at the CPAC hearing. I think the conditions, though, as outlined, are ones that do address hours of operation and some of the concerns that have been raised. And I think the hours themselves will, I think, address concerns people might have about late night purchase of alcohol and what that may mean in that particular area. So I'm prepared to support the item and would move it unless there's any questions.
Are there any other questions?
Second.
Unanimous vote.
Wait, no, that is the vote
That
from
was
the
the last
last one.
time.
I keep telling you, the screens are not clearing.
You never cleared your screen from the last time.
It
Okay.
was clear on
Please
mine,
vote.
sorry.
Predictor of what's going to happen.
Unanimous vote. Sure. No, it was when I first brought it up.
Can you clear that? Yeah, okay, now we're working. Okay. Computer's not used to working on Mondays.
It's the weekend thing.
Bless you.
Okay, item 3 is the Truth Act Forum response for Immigration and Customs Enforcement access to individuals in Sacramento County jails.
Thank you. I'd like to make a brief statement before we start. Welcome to those in attendance. And the community forum is being held in accordance with the State Truth Act, specifically Government Code 7283.1D. Purpose of the forum is for the Sheriff's Department to provide information to the public about the Federal Immigration and Customs Enforcement Division access to individuals stopped, arrested, or detained by the Sheriff's Department, and for the public to comment on this issue. The forum will proceed as follows. The Sheriff's Department will provide information about ICE activities to individuals arrested or detained by the county, with board members able to ask questions of the Sheriff's representative or the Sheriff. Members of the public will have the opportunity to provide comments limited to 2 minutes per speaker. There are sign-up cards that look like this at the back of the chambers. Please fill that out and give the slip to one of our clerk's employees here. And I'll call the names of the speakers in order so that you can be prepared when your turn comes. Thank you, everyone, for being courteous and respectful of all views expressed. There will be no vote on this issue, so just so you know that, as it is a forum. I do have 2 requests for a little additional time, so we'll start those 2 first, and that's Davi Rodriguez and Sean Reardon. Davi will be first, and I think we'll give you both 5 minutes so you can lay out your positions, and other people will be testifying for 2 minutes. So, Mr. Rodriguez? Oh, I'm sorry, the sheriff first. There we go.
Well, good morning. Happy Monday to all of you. I appreciate this opportunity. The law is not entirely clear whether there has to be a hearing this year because the law came into effect January 1st of 2018, and it talked about a hearing in the subsequent year. And I know different counties are treating it differently, but I definitely wanted this hearing. There's no, it's always good to get more information than less. But I think a couple of preliminary comments are in order. There's also no requirement that I or the Sheriff's Department be here, but I thought it also important that I present the information and make myself available for questions should you have them after the information is presented. The other thing I had to let everybody know is I wasn't sure how long this hearing was going to take, and I do have other obligations today. It looks as though I will stay for all of the comments. That is my desire, but if I do have to leave during it, it's because I had other commitments that I couldn't get out of. But I'll certainly have plenty of time to go over the information. My part is fairly short. Were we able to get the... Next slide, please. Oh, do I have a clicker? Yeah. Well, this is fancy. This might be a little bit past my area of expertise. So the little arrow that's worn out, is that? Okay, all right. I can do this. All right. And where do I point it? Anywhere? Okay, so obviously the highest degree of interest is going to be allowing access of ICE in our facilities, which I will get to. We'll treat each of our facilities separately for reasons I'll get into in a moment, but I thought it worthwhile to start with our activities within the community. As a spoiler alert, there really is no stats to give you in the community, but I think the absence of stats is also noteworthy to mention. So, of particular note, we do not or did not, still don't, have any coordinated activities or enforcement with ICE. I know that is, there's been a lot of misinformation given with regard to the Sheriff's Department and our level of cooperation with ICE in our communities. We don't have any level of cooperation whatsoever with ICE in our communities. Furthermore, we in the Sheriff's Department never inquire about someone's immigration status, regardless of the nature of the contact, whether it is someone calling 911 or calling us for non-emergency service or for informational purposes, or if they happen to be an arrestee or a detainee. We never verify or inquire about anyone's status. That also follows to the jail. When someone is booked into our jail, whether it's our arrest or anyone else's arrest in the county, obviously they all come to our jail. We never inquire about someone's immigration status when they're in our facility. We simply don't care. It's not relevant for us in our enforcement in the community. It's not relevant for us housing them in our facility. The only relevance is their local charges, and that's what we cater to. We may ask folks where they were born, but that has to do with consular notification requirements that are required by law, not immigration status. So, for example, if we were to ask someone where they were born and they said Mexico, there would be no follow-up questions to inquire as to the legal nature or lack of legal nature of their status here in California, or in Sacramento in our jail. So because of all that, we don't keep, we don't monitor, we don't track any stats from our community engagement relative to the undocumented population. So our jails, it's worthy to note that we have two different facilities that serve two different purposes, and it's also important to remember that this forum is regarding the year of 2017. So during that time, for example, we had a contract for housing with ICE, which we no longer have. So the hearing next year for the 2018 will look very different, but these stats are from 2017. So we have two different facilities that serve predominantly two different purposes. Our Sacramento County Main Jail is predominantly a pre-trial facility. So those are going to be folks that are arrested and being detained pending trial on local charges, whatever they're going to be. They were unable to make bail, they don't have bail, whatever the reason, they're in custody pending local charges. So the really ICE involvement for that facility is going to be twofold. Filing detainers against those folks, saying we know, basically ICE saying we know that these folks have local charges and commitments, but when they're done, we have an interest in them, and also allowing ICE into our facilities to conduct interviews pursuant to their mandates, their law enforcement mandates. Our other facility is a little bit different, and I'll get to that in a moment, but this has to do with our pretrial facility, predominantly pretrial facility, the Sacramento County Main Jail. So you can see right there in 2017, for the entirety of the year, we received 415 immigration detainers from ICE. as you can also see, the holds were entered and immediately canceled out through the California Trust Act of 2014. So by saying we received the detainers, it has no legal effect on their status within the facility or their ability to get out. So historically, as you know, detainers were meant to hold folks for no longer than 48 hours once their local charges were cleared, for ICE to have up to 48 hours to come and take custody of them or decide what they were going to do. That obviously no longer applies after the Trust Act. So ever since the Trust Act in early 2014, while we allow them to file detainers on folks, it has no legal effect. We immediately dismiss it in terms of holding them in custody. So if they got a detainer, bailed out an hour later, they're getting out. They're not going to be held for any 1 second longer than their local charges otherwise would allow. But in 2017, we accepted 415 immigration detainers in that context. We also, ICE conducted, as you can see, 49? Yes, 49 interviews at our main jail. There's 2 at the Rio Casinos Correctional Center, because I say that predominantly is our sentence facility. We do house pretrial detainees as an overflow measure, so there were a couple that occurred down at the Correctional Center, but these were also pretrial folks. But by and large, the majority of our interviews were conducted in our main jail, and during the course of 2017, there were 49 law enforcement interviews conducted by ICE agents. And just to put that in a little bit of context, in 2017, our total law enforcement interviews that were non-ICE related, in other words, El Dorado County, FBI, Stockton Police Department, whoever, we conducted 2,925 law enforcement interviews. So the ICE interviews of the main jail comprised a little over 1.5% of our overall law enforcement interviews in that facility. As you can see, it's a pretty busy facility. We book a little over 50,000 folks through there each year. Our Rio Casinos Correctional Center, in contrast to our main jail, is more of a sentence facility. I say predominantly because, again, we do have some overflow pre-sentence folks that are down there, but predominantly it is our sentence facility. Through the entirety of 2017, it was also where we held a contract for bed space with ICE. So it was, if you think of it like an ICE jail within our Rio Casinos Correctional Center jail, it was a contract that basically the folks that they wanted to keep custody of, ICE doesn't have their own jail, so they contract with local agencies such as ours, local counties such as ours, during 2017 for bed space. So the stats regarding ICE custody are going to be from the branch jail, not the main jail. So again, the interview part, there was 2 from the branch jail, but this is going to be more concerned with the folks that were housed under contract for ICE during that year. So as you can see, in 2017, there were a total of 1,303 detainees that were held at the Rio Casinos Correctional Center under the ICE contract, under the contract that we had with ICE, that we are paid daily for each of those inmates, which makes an average daily ICE detainee population for the year of 2017, 134. Although the Act doesn't necessarily require this, I thought it might be illustrative to break down the detainees by race and by gender in the next slide. As you can see, a number of different races, predominantly, obviously, Hispanic by a large margin, but many other races represented, and 1 lonely female in ICE custody, and the 1,302 remaining were all male detainees under the ICE contract. So I said that'd be short and sweet, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Mr. Cernat?
Thank you. Our request to speak button, at least mine, is not working. Thank you, Chair, for being here. Just a quick question. I just want to understand the front part of your presentation about the process. So if there's no questions that are administered, no inquiries administered by your staff about immigration status, what is the trigger that ultimately would give ICE the heads up that you may want to come here, use your 48 hours to interview and possibly take custody of someone?
Sure. And I'm assuming you're talking about once they get in the jail, because there is no...
Right.
provision out in the community, but once they get in the jail,
Right.
so the question being, well, then how does ICE know who they want? ICE has access to our facility. They're in our facility regularly, and they have access to our databases. So we don't give people heads up. We don't give them calls, say, hey, you might want to look at this person. It's entirely their own operation, utilizing the information that we make available to them in the jail.
So, as an example, there might be some ICE personnel that have access to a database of names, and they plug in a name, and the name comes back, and in their protocols, it indicates that they have questionable immigration status. That's their key to take the next step.
That's correct. We don't have access to ICE's database. Only they do. So they have to be the one to put whatever input in that gives them whatever output that triggers a further interest.
Thank you.
Mr. Natoli?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sheriff, for being here this morning. Just a couple questions. I want to make sure that I think the currency is understood, because as you pointed out, these are 2017 statistics. In 2018, the board chose not to go forward with any further contract, and so that ended July 1st. When was the last person who was held under the contract? When did they? Do you know when they left?
I know approximately. If the contract ended, in other words, it wasn't renewed, so
Right.
July 1st would have been the first
Of
day
this year,
without a
2018,
contract, of
right.
18. They were, I think everybody was out of the facility like a week or two prior to that June, the end of June. So I know that I think the last week of June, there was nobody in our ICE custody. So they actually got out earlier than the contract allowed, but they were out, I want to say a week before the contract.
And what, to your recollection, again, we'll have a hearing.
And I'm sorry, if I can just
yeah,
augment
sure.
that. I think they started getting removed by ICE shortly after the vote was made to not renew the contract.
Which was on June 6th, I believe. I think it was the.
Yeah, and it was several weeks earlier. So they started taking folks out. So our population diminished almost immediately, and then just I think the last person was taken out about a week before the end of June.
Okay. And just to that point then, were the numbers, again, we'll have a chance to have a hearing around this this time next year, but were the numbers roughly the same for the first 6 months of this year? 134, were they a little lower, a little higher? Do you know?
I think they were a little lower.
Okay.
My recollection is, and obviously we have these numbers,
Right.
I just don't have them with me, but
report those
my
out.
recollection is the population hovered right around 100 for the majority of that first 6 months.
Okay. And I guess one other statistic, and kind of goes to what Supervisor Cerna was asking about, but as relates to if ICE did the interview and then detain folks for a longer period of time, or there was some other disposition, did we track that? You gave them the 48 hours within the facility, right?
I want to be clear, we did not give any 48 hours. We didn't hold We did not. Okay.
We
did not hold person 1 second longer than their local charges. So if they went to court and were released on their own recognizance, if they bailed out, if they otherwise got out, they were out without regard to any detainer status.
Okay, so that was so we did not hold them beyond whatever status would have been in the courts, or as you said, bailed out. Okay.
No.
Very good. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you. Do I need to do anything with this?
No, you're good.
So we've had a few people come in since we started. Remind if you want to speak, fill out a speaker's form. They're available at the back of the room. Give it to our clerk there. And we're going to give 2 speakers 5 minutes for opposing points of view, I believe. And the first will be Davi Rodriguez and then Sean Reardon. Davi, please come to the front. Davi?
Yep.
And just so you know, everyone, I'm going to run a clock, and you'll be able to see how much time you have left on the big screen up there.
Sorry, the hearing is quite compromised today, but don't worry, they tell me it's not contagious. I'm Davi Rodriguez from Save Our State. I'm also representing numerous people right here in Sacramento who couldn't attend the meeting today because it's during work hours. That's always been a point of contention for me, but we'll take that up at another point. I'm not quite sure I understand the legislature's intent on these meetings, but it seems to me it's just meant to further exacerbate and inflame passions over the immigration issue, which are already at an all-time high. So that said, I would like to address a couple things. Number one, I don't know when immigration law enforcement became such a dirty word in our country. It is a law enforcement system that has worked fairly well to keep some undesirable people from hurting other people in this community. And but I think the answer to that would be corruption, the corruption of our morals. I watched the employment system fall to be the first victim, I think, when I used to maybe you remember, I was protesting the day labor center over there by my parents' house, which had attracted several hundred illegal day laborers and pretty much drove the neighborhood right to hell. It was amazing me how quickly people turned a blind eye to both state and federal law and hired these workers time after time, some of them to their own demise. They would actually be robbed, raped, beaten. But it got worse for me when I saw how it affected government and how government was willing accomplice to evading federal law. We do not treat any other federal law enforcement like we do immigration enforcement, and I don't understand that. The way I got very active in this movement was back in 2003, there was a man, his name was Cameron Brown, driving his motorcycle to work one evening in, I am guessing, I think it was Sunrise Boulevard area, and he was run over and killed, even though he had a green light, by a van full of people that a man was transporting to Oregon to go work in the fields illegally. He told his cargo to run, which they all did because what he was doing was illegal. And I feel sorry for this man because he felt that our government had his back, that all of us would watch out for him, that the border was going to be protected, and that people would not encourage this sort of activity and hurt people. He was buried quietly, had a small amount of family. The person that was driving that van was charged. He got like a year in prison for killing a man, and he had the numerous people that were with him that day testify against him. But that was pretty much the end of it. And from then, it just kept exacerbating. The problem got bigger and better, worse and worse and worse, to lead us where we are today. Immigration enforcement is a dirty word. Why? I would urge you people not to do, and I mean you people, I'm talking about the Board of Supervisors and law enforcement included, not to do anything further to inhibit the collection of data and the investigation of crimes in the immigration area, because who else will do it? Anybody can cross the border these days if they got the money to do it, and we don't know if we don't keep an eye on that particular area of crime. If we're not investigating it, and ICE or Border Patrol and all those people are too busy, they don't have the wherewithal to be everywhere. Who has our back? I urge you to consider Cameron Brown, and maybe even visit his gravesite. Now, this guy was nothing to me. I know him not. Never knew him before. Didn't know him afterwards. He's just one of the people that we all should have had his back. And if law enforcement and the governing boards of our communities don't have our backs, why should we have yours? You remember the old saying, see something, say something? Why would we be encouraged to report any harm to law enforcement, any harm to our governing bodies, if they will not do the same for us? That's all I had to say. I appreciate the time you allotted me. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Rodriguez. Next speaker is Sean Reardon.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Reardon.
I'm an attorney with the ACLU of Northern California, based here in Sacramento. It's my first time appearing here. Thank you for holding the forum. Quick note on timing. This is a forum that in other parts of the state has been held as a true community forum, an opportunity for affected individuals and families to come and have their concerns addressed in public. And given that we're holding this forum at 9:30 on a Monday morning this year, I don't think you're going to see the kind of representation of the concerns that have been expressed at other forums across the state. And so hopefully that's something that through coordination between the various stakeholders for a 2019 forum, we can look to improve on. But nonetheless, this is, of course, an important opportunity for transparency and oversight to be lifted up in the context of entanglement between local law enforcement and immigration. There are a number of questions that I think are important to try to address, if not now, moving forward, even after the sheriff's presentation. But before we get there, I just want to offer my own personal perspective to try to take away some of the abstraction that I think can obscure what's really going on when we talk about ICE holds and various policies, which are important, but in and of themselves don't explain the human side of these things. Before I recently became an attorney with the ACLU, I was an assistant federal public defender here in Sacramento, where I represented individuals detained at the Sacramento County Jail and charged with federal immigration crimes. One of my clients, I will just call her NP because I haven't been able to obtain her permission to use her story, was accused of a federal immigration crime based on having returned to the United States after a prior deportation. However, her prior deportation was illegal, meaning that she had been deported unfairly, and so her prosecution here in federal court was terminated. The federal judge dismissed the charges. At that point, however, instead of being released from Sacramento County Jail to her family, she was released to ICE. She was detained by ICE, and she had had a prior experience of assault while in immigration custody and was quite despondent. So instead of fighting her case, which would have been meritorious, she signed her own deportation papers again. And I should say she also suffered from some mental health issues that exacerbated these problems. This was devastating to her and her family. It still is. And that's just one of many illustrations of what happens when people who should be released from jail back to their families, even those like this client who should not be deported, are instead turned over to ICE into a detention and deportation system, which is quite cold and unforgiving. There's a lot of big questions out there, but I'm just going to highlight two coming out of the presentation that the sheriff just provided. So these questions are informed by Public Records Act requests that our organization did previously, seeking policies and procedures that related to the way the sheriff interacts with ICE. And so what I heard Sheriff Jones explaining is that we don't communicate with ICE, we don't actively cooperate with ICE at any level. However, I don't see that reflected in the policies that we received, and it's also not reflected at least not in those simple terms, in the experiences that people have had in being transferred from sheriff's custody to ICE custody. So to the extent that there's follow-up, I'm going to highlight two areas where I see immediate issues here that should be explored. So one is the notion that there is no communication actively between the Sheriff's Department and ICE. In a Sheriff's Department document entitled Post-Order ICE Detainer Releases, there is a section on communication and notification to ICE. And there is part of that says that there will not be communication about certain matters. However, it says that ICE will be notified of CLETS hits and immigration warrants. It will be the responsibility of ICE to act upon this information. So I think the question is, what are these CLETS warrants? How do they operate? And how is it that kind of information is transmitted then to ICE from the Sheriff's Department? And then it also says that a release officer with the Sheriff's Department will notify ICE as soon as possible about inmates being released that have a canceled ICE detainer and a completed SB 54 verification form on file. So I think the question is, how often did that happen, that those communications were in fact made between the Sheriff's Department and ICE? And what did the Sheriff's Department do ahead of time to ensure that whatever communication was going on complied with SB 54, with the California Values Act, which intends to spare people from being turned over to ICE, except under certain very limited exceptions. The other aspect I wanted to highlight is this question about physical release and whether or not there's any coordination between the Sheriff's Department and ICE upon the physical release of somebody. I see I'm out of time, so I'll just highlight that as an area that should be the subject of further inquiry by the board and the community to determine how and when those releases are occurring.
Thank you. Before we go to the next speaker, I wanted to mention that if anyone needs interpreter services, they are available. No one signed up for them, but if you need them, please go to the back and we can help you. The next speaker is Dr. Rhonda Rios-Kravitz.
Good morning, Chair Peters and board members. I wanted to thank you for hosting this forum, but as Sean has stated, this time was a very difficult time for us to get people here. We had the Sac City Unified School District Cerna Center offer its facilities to us at 6 p.m. in order to have parking and the ability of community members to speak. And we hope for next year's forum that we will take advantage of an opportunity to really have our community participate. In this era of unprecedented and aggressive immigration enforcement and anti-immigrant rhetoric, undocumented individuals in the county of Sacramento, some 61,000 people, are at risk of long-term detention and deportation. Now, more than ever, we need accountability, we need transparency, and we would like our sheriff, as well as the Board of Supervisors, really to release aggregate data on what the situation is with ICE and the interaction of the Sheriff's Department. For instance, Humboldt County has released to the public data on ICE administrative detainers received, ICE interviews, in-person or telephone, inmate release data provided to ICE, convictions associated with qualifying inmates. We saw the data provided by the sheriff. Why is that not public? Why did we have to come to a forum like this to request this data? Why is that not on your Board of Supervisors data? And so I have questions that we were hoping that the sheriff could answer. And I will pose these questions and see if there's time for the sheriff to answer them. Does the sheriff tell inmates if ICE is looking for them in the jail? Sacramento County, that's question one. The second question, Sacramento County is one of very few counties in California that claims not to maintain any aggregate ICE data. In a response to a Public Records Act request sent by the National Day Labor Organizing Network and Asian Americans Advancing Justice Law Caucus in March 2018, The response was, no responsive documentation exists. Why does this sheriff's office not maintain aggregate ICE data? Is the sheriff's office planning to maintain aggregate ICE data given new provisions in the California Values Act around reporting to the California Attorney General's office? In order to provide more transparency, will the sheriff's office commit to maintaining aggregate ICE data? So those are questions I posed to the sheriff. We were hoping that this forum would also have an ability to pose questions and have the sheriff respond. Will that be the case?
It isn't planned at the moment, but we'll see if the sheriff wishes to respond or not. Thank you. Mariana Magana. After Ms. Magana, Dr. Rita Cepeda.
Good morning, board members. My name is Mariana Magana, and I'm here with the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. We have various offices throughout the state of California, including here in Sacramento, and we work to advance pro-immigrant policies in all levels of government. First and foremost, thank you to some of the county board members who voted to end the intergovernmental contract that was holding our community members in cages. However, we know that the Sacramento County Sheriff Department is still an adamant proponent of increased cooperation between ICE and local law enforcement agencies. It has been demonstrated that immigrant community members must trust their local law enforcement agency to report when they're victims or witnesses of a crime without the fear of deportation. And any intertanglement between ICE and the sheriff departments will do the exact opposite. With approximately 270,000 immigrants living in Sacramento County, limiting the intertanglement between ICE and the local law enforcement agency is crucial, especially today, where the Trump administration has largely increased interior enforcement, utilizing the local criminal justice system to funnel folks and advance its deportation agenda. As a result, as others have mentioned, we want to highlight that disentanglement right, but we also want to ensure that there's compliance with the Trust Act, the Truth Act, and the Values Act, SB 54, and we want to push the county to do more. We want more data that's more thorough. We want the jails to only allow access to ICE individuals with a valid judicial warrant. Essentially, we want to push ICE out of our jails because we know that some of our community members are highly criminalized at higher rates than other folks. And we want to make sure that, once again, they're not being punished with the ultimate punishment of deportation. Once again, just want to reiterate that despite the attacks that have taken place on our immigrant community members these past years, we will continue to defend the values of equality, equity, and justice, and will actively protect our neighbors here in Sacramento County to ensure that they're protected from the federal abuses of power and to ensure that everyone who calls Sacramento County home can feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cepeda, then Susan Lang.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. You've heard lots of statements about the fact that we could have had a better opportunity to interact with the community had this forum been held at a time and place that would have made it possible for the community to be present. But that being said, perhaps we can work with you on the next forum and make sure that that does happen. Now, there's a series of questions that we have identified, and you've indicated that those questions would be made available to the sheriff and he can determine whether he should answer them or not. That's a sad commentary, because in our Public Records Act's request, when we have asked questions of the sheriffs, the response we've gotten is either a no, not available, or ask someone else. So hopefully we can get those questions answered. A couple of things that are sort of interesting in the presentation from the sheriff. Indeed, the 48-hour hold in the county jail was an accurate response, but there were individuals at the RCCC who were there for 5 years. 5 years for what is supposed to be not even a criminal act. So think about the context of the responses. So the two questions I would like to add to those of my colleagues are as follows. Per a post-order policy on ICE detainee releases, the sheriff has outlined the procedure to notify ICE and to the inmates, but it is unclear if the inmate's attorney is notified. Is proper notification given to the attorney as required by the Truth Act? And the other question, the sheriff's office policy is to comply with voluntary notification requests in certain situations. Who from the sheriff's office is responsible for notifying ICE? What is the process? How far in advance does ICE know when a person will be released from custody? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Susan Lang, and then Joe
Just
Engel.
one more thing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm terribly sorry as well. Immigration enforcement became a dirty word, I think, by one of the earlier statements. I think that what we're suffering right now is the fact that immigrants and immigration has become a dirty word.
Good morning. My name is Susan Lang. I live in Elk Grove, and Mr. Natoli is my representative. I am coordinator of a visitation program for people in immigration detention at the Yuba County Jail in Marysville. We are not religious or legal representatives or social workers. We are just community members who try to help end the isolation of people in immigration detention and advocate for their fair treatment. I am here because I am community, and the people I visit are our community. How can we understand what is going on with those who find themselves in immigration detention if we don't have answers to our questions? The community would like to know what are the data around ICE's communications with the Sheriff's Office? What is the Sheriff's Office process for releasing a person from custody, and how long does the process take? In 2017, how often was ICE inside of Sacramento jails? How many agents came on average? Were there specific times when ICE arrived at the jails to pick up individuals who were being released? I don't understand the process. I've been visiting, talking, and hearing the stories of people for about 5 years. When there's a language barrier, the shock of being involved with ICE, and family separation, the people directly involved certainly do not understand the process. This goes on behind closed doors. But we in the community would like to understand. Lack of transparency leads to lack of trust. When we treat people secretly and unfairly, it doesn't reflect on them, it reflects on us. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Engel, and then Mario Galvan.
Hello, my name is Joe Engel. I'm a resident of Sacramento, and I am a U.S. veteran of the U.S. Navy and employed by NNR Publications. Also a member of the Sacramento Immigration Coalition. And I have two questions. Do ICE arrests ever happen prior to a person's release from criminal custody, i.e. while a person is in pretrial or still serving time on a sentence, and how often? The Sheriff's Office patrols unincorporated areas of the county. In 2017, what did the Sheriff's Office do when officers encountered an immigration warrant for someone, either during a field stop or while a person was in officer's custody? Thank you.
Thank you. Mario Galvan, and then Frederick Gale Jr.
My name is Mario Galvan. I'm a member of Step Up and the Sacramento Immigration Coalition. And I want to just echo the comments that have been made about the lack of transparency in regard to requests for public information from the Sheriff's Office. That in our case, from Step Up, after several months, we received nothing at all. Just said, well, go ask ICE instead. But I would really like to raise, I don't know whether I should call it the elephant in the room of racism in our public policies. I would like to point out that, there's a big talk about who's illegal and who's legal these days. I'd like to point out that this land that we're on was conquered multiple times. I'm just wondering if we, as a society, accept that violence is legal. In our history as a nation, we had slavery here. That was legal. We had the extermination of Native Americans, including here in California, where the state of California actually paid a bounty on people to go out and hunt American Indians and get paid for it. I would like to mention the criminalization and, again, was this legal? when at the end of the Mexican-American War, where the United States took California and part of 7 other states from Mexico, taking away half of Mexico's physical territory. The Treaty of Guadalupe guaranteed the rights of former people here, but they were called Californios, who owned great territories here. And by various quote-unquote legal means, these people have been deprived of their property, their right to speak their own language. I'd like to point out that our lovely little neighbor town of Placerville, it was originally called Hangtown, and the people being hung there were Mexicans. So as we talk about, who's legal and what's right, let's keep in mind that the law is often used to hide white privilege, and notice that our nation's prisons are full of black and brown people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Galvan. Frederick Gale, Jr., and then Gladys Fuente.
Frederick Gale, 7336 Hurlong Way, North Highlands.
Good morning, Mr. Gale. Good morning.
Good morning, very well. This is a kind of special day. I was talking to some family members last night, and oftentimes we forget. Yeah. To recognize people who have been great citizens, great leaders. And we came up with the word, Disraeli, Justice Brandeis, Thomas Paine, Benjamin Franklin. And my cousin asked me, do I know anybody in that area if we were given awards to? I said, one, very competent person, both. I said, for the Disraeli Award, I would give it to Don Natoli, and for the Brandeis, a Frankfurter Award, to your young counsel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gale. Gladys Fuente, and then Suzanne Georgie.
Good morning. My name is Gladys Puente. I'm the Field Program Coordinator. The Sacramento Field Network is a coalition of over 65 local organizations, law school immigration clinics, unions, educators, faith-based organizations who are working to prepare and defend immigrant families under this administration from deportations. I would like to first thank the board for bringing the issue of jail policies to the public and allowing us to provide public comment. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Fuel Network Advocacy Committee, which is composed of the NAACP, the Center for African Peace and Conflict Resolution out of Sacramento State University, Council on American Islamic Relations, La Familia Counseling Center, the Sacramento Food Bank, NorCal Resist, Center for Workers' Rights, and California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation, as well as many other local organizations that work with immigrant and refugee families throughout the Sacramento region. The Sacramento Fuel Network Advocacy Committee urges the Board of Supervisors to stand up for immigrant and refugee families in this region, especially our children and family members here, and create a safe and welcoming environment by holding the Sheriff Scott Jones accountable for his track record that most of us know violates immigrant rights. Dismantling mass incarceration is a defining civil rights issue in this country and also here locally. Due to the over-incarceration of millions of working class people each year. Millions are incarcerated per year for crimes related to poverty, mental health issues that are not treated, addiction, not being able to afford to post bail, due process violations that happen outside and inside of the jails, systemic inequalities such as the schools to prison pipeline. Currently, taxpayers spend $40,000 per year to lock up an immigrant in Adelanto prison that currently has many Sacramento County residents within Adelanto, and only $11,300 per student at a public school. An alarming national statistic that we must address at a county level is the fact that over the past several years, almost half of immigration court cases have gone unrepresented. In 2016, 70% of low-income poor families with cases that were closed did not have representation. 70% of those that are detained currently do not have an attorney. Thankfully, we also have positive statistics. Representation increases due process and immigration court nationwide. 95% of those represented have a successful case and are 10 times more likely to win in court. In the city of Sacramento, thankfully, we also have a positive and successful statistic. If you go to a fuel attorney, you are 14 times more likely to have a successful outcome in your case than if you are not represented. Could you wind up your thoughts,
please? Give us your...
Yes, and I'd also just like to then quickly move on to a Sacramento County resident that we are currently working with. So we know that even with an attorney, violations can happen and disrupt a detainee's constitutional rights to fair representation and a chance to freedom. So I actually want to provide an actual example of a detainee, a Sacramento County
Ms.
resident.
Puente, could you please finalize your comments?
Yes. So there's a Free Miguel Angel campaign. He's being represented by Pangea Legal Services. Miguel Angel has lived in the United States for 21 years, since the age of 13. Most of his family lives in the United States. He's a positive role model, an avid soccer player.
Puente, everyone else kept within the time limits. I ask you to do the same.
Okay, so I just
You're
want to
a
go
minute
into...
past your time.
While he has a pending DUI charges from January 2018, he never had his day in criminal court because the Sacramento Sheriff's Department violated the Truth Act and cooperated with ICE, allowing ICE to apprehend Miguel Angel and detain him at West County Detention Facility in Richmond. At the Sacramento jail holding, Miguel Angel was held for 16 hours January 7, 2018, several hours after everyone else was released, only so that ICE could arrest him in violation of SB 64.
Ms. Puente, I've asked very politely for you to end your comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
So my final comment is we just advocate for you to please hold the sheriff accountable.
Thank you.
And anybody who doesn't get their comments in, if they have them in writing, as it looked like you did, ma'am, you can give them to the clerk and we'll all get them.
Suzanne Georgie.
County Board of Supervisors. I came to this meeting expecting to hear more transparency about the ICE involvement with the Sheriff's Office and also to hear community concerns. I think, again, echoing some of the comments, you don't have a full group of the community here because of the time and place of this meeting. As for the Sheriff's presentation, I believe it was inadequate. I have many questions, and echoing the comments of Ms. Lang, how does someone who has been working in this area trying to communicate with these people who are being held for 5 years not understand the process? I think there needs to be more transparency available to all of us about what is the process. What is the understanding of the ICE presence? How is that database used? What is the basis for ICE's access to the sheriff's database? What data fields are available? Are there any data fields that are shielded, such as the place of birth? I understand the need to touch customs to see if, the consulate for question of the birth, but that was good for Mexico. What about Vietnamese and Cambodian? What happens to that group, that population group that is now being rounded up? As for PRA requests, we've seen multiple speakers at this presentation and at the previous presentation saying that their PRA requests were being inadequately responded to. I went on your internet, I searched under the sheriff's PRA requests and found only one. I did not see any of the ones that were mentioned at the previous meeting or the ones that were mentioned at this meeting. I think you may have a problem with your transparency on your PRA requests and the response to PRA requests from the sheriff.
Thank you. That concludes the requests to speak that I have. Does anyone else wish to speak? Okay. Oh, Mr. Natoli?
Yeah, the button's not working.
Your name's not coming up here, so sorry.
I wanted to just ask a question of Mr. Gill about PRA requests. I thought we had a central location for processing these due for the sheriff and district attorney, for example. Do those go to those folks directly, or are they all supposed to come through the party that's assigned in the county to make sure those go out and they get responded to timely. Obviously, it's still, there's a requirement.
That's what you just said. They come into a central place, then they're assigned out to the respective department for an answer. They come back, county council.
Because there is a tracking of that,
Yeah.
obviously with council and with county executive's offices for those PRA requests.
Correct.
Whether it's the sheriff or general services or transportation or whoever.
Yes.
And I think my question then would be a follow-on now for that. Is there a tracking, not only while the request is current, but then is there a summary list of the types, the nature of the requests? Obviously, the data is exchanged, but so do we keep a running list of that for any given year, so someone could go and say there was a request? I just use Board of Supervisors to the clerk of the Board of Supervisors for public information requests.
We do have a database that does have that information. At this moment, I don't know exactly if we summarize every year, but those reports are available.
Okay. I guess it just occurs to me, again, some of these things we've heard previously, not necessarily the questions, but the concerns about timeliness of response, but also the nature of the response. Obviously, that's the substance, but I think that it would behoove this county, particularly in the day and age that we reside in, for a myriad of reasons, that we ought to have an established process.
We do. Supervisor Natoli, we have an established process. PRA comes in, we log it in, we send it to the respective department, or whoever inquiry's coming in, inquiry comes back, it's reviewed by somebody in the office of the county executive with input from county council, and that information then is transmitted back to who's asked for it. I think it's a 10-day or 14 days that we have to do it. We meet all those criteria. If there is if the information is not available and we cannot produce it, that response is given with input from county council on it.
So what if somebody wrote to a department, in this case, the sheriff's department, but it could be any department? Is there incumbent responsibility for the department to do the touchback through the process that you've just outlined, to be sure that then we have a record of those requests and obviously the disposition of them?
Correct.
Okay. Because when I heard this, I mean, I've heard some of these comments previously in meetings before this board, but also when folks came forward about the ICE contract itself. So I just want to be clear about that, because it sounds to me that from the last commenter's point that she went to some database and saw only one request for a PRA. Now, I don't know where that's held, who's responsible for managing that, but I think, again, it just seems to me that if we have that process, it needs to be known to everyone, certainly to the public, but to all the folks within the county family, and that we make sure that, again, those are run through a particular sequence so that people can know that they're being, again, asked and responded to. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear the last part because we were struggling with the
computer problems,
computers up here. I guess what I wanted to know is, so we track them, we log them, we send them out to and we do this with council's input throughout that process, but specifically before the response goes out, do we have someone in county council who gives their blessing that the answer, and again, this is not just, as Supervisor Natoli said, this isn't just about the sheriff's department, this is about all 30-plus departments we have. Is there somebody who says these answers are adequate or they're not, they're lacking in X? Do we review them to that degree?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Cerna?
Thank you. So I'd like to make a request of our CEO, and I think there's probably plenty of time to fulfill the request before next year. But I think it would be worthwhile to, and perhaps you can set your appropriate staff loose, working with someone from the ACLU, to see what other counties are doing in terms of their reporting databases, in terms of their interaction with ICE. I'd like to have a better understanding. That's kind of one of the big piece of missing information for me here today is I don't know what the other 57 counties are doing in terms of how rich their their data is, what their protocols are. I can't really gauge where we are in that spectrum, so I think that would be something that wouldn't task your staff too much, Mr. Gill, and I think, again, we can probably get some assistance from others outside of the county.
Will do.
Thank you.
I would say it appears that the act doesn't lay out a procedure other than to have a forum. We did look at, or staff did look at, 3 other counties' responses, board meetings, and they were scattered around, but we're kind of in sync with the rest of them at this point. This is the first year, so maybe something will be different next year. There'll be more procedure laid out.
Madam Chair, can I just, one other follow-on. We did get some questions posed. Some of those, I assume, either have been presented in writing or will be presented in writing. Would it be possible to get a compilation of those? Obviously, they were attached to folks' verbal presentations, and then at least, forward them appropriately. Some of them may go to the sheriff, some may go to other operational aspects. It just seems to me, again, maybe some of those have been asked and been answered, and some have specifics regarding people's situations, individual situations, such as Ms. Fuentes' description of a situation very early this year. So I guess I would think that might be a little more, bring a little more closure to this hearing, that we got those in. Again, if appropriate, Sheriff Jones is here, but we can ask that if people want to submit those in writing, if they haven't already, we can then compile those and make the proper referral. Thanks.
I think that might be helpful if we can review the tape. We have addresses for most everyone. Compile the list of questions and forward it to the sheriff. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay.
I'm sorry, but if we do that and there's a response, if the board members could be copied on that response, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes this meeting. We're adjourned.